8 months since I've done a video on my Jeep Gladiator, and as you can see, it's changed pretty considerably over that time. In this video, I'm gonna go into why I've made the changes that I did, talk some about this very unique high clearance rear bumper, and what's next for this Jeep. All right, let's get to it. So I want to quickly address something that longtime viewers were probably pretty confused by. And yeah, the last time you saw this Gladiator, it did have a flatbed on the back and not the factory bed. I have removed the MITS alloy bed and it is gone to a new home. I want to briefly just talk about why, because I think it's important. For the past 2 years, I've had a MITS alloy, essentially flatbed and canopy. They call it a tray bed and canopy setup on the back of this Gladiator. I originally ordered this thing, the MITS alloy bed, the year that I knew I was going to take this thing on the Rubicon Trail and do a big wind rock trip and go to Moab. I knew I had all of that happening in 1 year. Unfortunately, shipping, COVID, everything else sort of happened, and my tray bed didn't show up until like October of that year, after I'd already done the Rubicon Trail, already gone to Moab, already done wind rock trips and Uwharrie trips. And so I basically got it after I already had this big year of wheeling planned, which was okay, because there were some challenges with that MITS alloy bed. It really wasn't designed for 40, so we had to modify it for that. And as I basically wheeled it, I learned sort of what the Jeep needed with that bed configuration. Now, why did I pull it off? I'm sure that's the big question here. You know, after 2 years of ownership with that bed on here, why would I get rid of it? And it really comes down to two things. It was a little too heavy with the canopy on it, especially with this new rock crawler 4.5-inch lift. It just, I was gonna have to do some type of airbag situation with the canopy on the back. Without having the canopy, it was a flatbed, and it just wasn't very practical for me trying to haul all of our family stuff on wheeling outings. So I loved it if I was just wheeling, because the flatbed just gave me a ton of clearance. It was completely durable for like hitting it off-road. I had a ton of departure angle, so it was great for that. I love the drawer system. There was not a real issue with it, with the weight, with it just as a flatbed, but with the canopy and the spare on the back and all the stuff loaded in, it just was, it put this thing at max payload. It just felt heavy, and it really was too much for the 4.5-inch rock crawler, and I didn't want to go back down to the Dobinson heavy-duty springs that I'd been using in the back. So that was one thing that I was kind of struggling with. And the other issue really was the width of it. Now, you may remember from my last video, I basically cut off the headache rack that came on this, and I had a friend of mine, Bobby Downs, essentially slope the sides of that headache bar, or wherever you want to call it, the bulkhead, to give me a little bit more clearance on either side of it. And the reason I did that is I had a few trail instances where, because the bed was so much wider than the body, it would actually catch on trees. And I had some bad scenarios where it essentially caught a tree and wedged the tree between the cab of the Jeep and the headache rack. So for me, that was a real big problem, especially considering I wheel a lot by myself, and I needed something to be, you know, it's a safety thing at that point. Like, this just didn't make sense. So I lobbed that off thinking, all right, you know what, this would be a lot better. And truly, for the past, I don't know, 6 or 7 months, it was. And I kind of made it work. But ultimately, I just didn't like how wide the bed was. And I really was struggling with, I needed the functionality of the canopy, but it was just so heavy. I didn't want to go back. And I had an opportunity to do some different stuff with this Jeep if I put the stock bed back on. And I started thinking about, maybe I should do that. And I thought, oh, that's crazy. And if you've watched the channel for a long time, you know I've actually had 2 Gladiators since 2020. My Gator Gladiator, we started using way more than this one because it had the bed. That's what we were taking to the beach, and that's what we were taking wheeling. And I'm like, wait a second, I've dumped all this money into this Gladiator to be the thing that we take wheeling and do all this stuff in. This is crazy. I'm not going to build another Gladiator to this point. I need to figure out, why am I not using what we call the tent Jeep. And part of it was because the flatbed just wasn't practical and the canopy was too heavy. So I said, you know what, this is crazy. And so I've made a couple big changes. Number one, I did sell my gator color Jeep Gladiator. I think it was fantastic. And that was just one of those things where it's like, you know what? If I'm gonna get rid of that, and we were using it so much with the stock bed, I think I need to go back. I've had this thing sitting in storage, and so that's what I did. I decided to pull the canopy setup off and go back to the factory bed. Okay, so now that I've explained why I don't have the Mitts alloy bed on the back anymore, now let's talk about the stock bed and things that I did to improve it for basic wheeling. Now, the first thing I had to do, because my old taillights were broken, is get a set of replacement taillights. Now, these are from Oracle. I've never actually had a set of Oracle lights, but I've heard sort of mixed reviews. Some people have had really good luck with them, and others have said they kind of died out after a year and that sort of thing. So I don't know. It'd be very interesting to see. Why I wanted the Oracle lights is really just clearance. They stick to the body a lot more than the factory light. I've broken plenty of factory taillights on the Gladiator, so I'm hoping these will last a lot longer. Only time will tell. Now, the other big thing you'll notice here is I've got a very unique rear bumper. At least I think it's fairly unique. Now, when I decided to put the bed back on, I knew I wasn't gonna put the stock bed. I wanted something with high clearance. And like a lot of people, I went to Google looking for different Jeep Gladiator back bumpers that were high clearance. That's clearance was more important than anything else. And I ended up finding a back bumper from a guy that has a shop out of Grand Junction, Colorado, named Chad Wheeler. He owns something called Wheeler Industries. He's a owner-operator, small fab shop, and he had built himself a high clearance back bumper for his Gladiator. And I was just like, man, I think that would be perfect. So I just sent him a message on Instagram and said, hey, I love that back bumper you built for your Jeep. Would you build me one? And we got on the phone, started talking about some options, settled out on a price, and he did. Basically built me a back bumper in Colorado and sent it to North Carolina. And this is what we have. Now, what this is essentially a high clearance tube bumper. The main sections of tubing are 2-inch 120 wall, and it's actually sleeved with 1 3/4 120 wall tubings here at the end. And it's done so to have basically reinforcement for this side piece here that actually bolts the outer wing. The main section bolts using 2 bolts on each side that are factory, and then a total of 2 grade 8 bolts on the sort of frame rails. Now, that's your main portion. The outer wings see over the main channel of the frame and bolt to this outer wing here. It uses a 6.5 inch long grade 8 5/8 bolt to essentially tie everything together. There's a cross bar or cross brace, if you will, that ties in both of these outer wings as well. So if it does get side loaded, you've got plenty of strength for that. Now, the big thing you probably noticed here is when I say high clearance, I really mean it. And to install this bumper, before I could ever put at least the side wings on, I had to chop 3.5 inches of body off of the back of the bed. And I used a Sawzall to do it. I'm sure there's other ways to do it, but that was, in my mind, the best tool for the job for, I don't know, my skill set and what I had. I'm not the best Sawzall, but I'm not the worst. I think I made a pretty decent go at it and cleaned it up where I could with the flap disc where it wasn't perfect. This material is not super thick to get through, and the idea here again is clearance. I know just from years of wheeling Gladiators that you hit the back bumper a lot, and if you're dropping off ledges and things like that or climbing up a lot of steep stuff, this thing's going to make an impact. It can't just look strong, it's got to be strong. Now, I didn't do any big tail light protection, didn't ask for any of that. I was trying to keep this thing as light and low profile as possible. In fact, his actually had a step bar, so it made it easier to step into the back out of the Gladiator's bed, and it had a receiver hitch in the back. I didn't want that. I don't tow with this Jeep. I didn't think that was going to be necessary. I just wanted recovery points, which he really cleanly got put into this bumper for me, and I wanted it to be as tight to the Jeep as possible without, you know, sacrificing, oh, it's too far under, so this, you know, tailgate or something might get damaged. And I think I've got the excellent balance of that, and I love the way it looks. I'm not necessarily like a big tube bumper guy in a traditional sense, but I love something that looks fabricated and made in a way that's kind of unique, and I think he did a phenomenal job. Very happy with this setup. He does make this license plate relocation for this bumper. Just got a cheap Amazon light to make this thing legit legal. Just one bolt that actually bolts onto this plate here. The small skid plate that you see I'll pan to now, it just came just a bare piece of aluminum. I ended up rattle canning it with like a textured or hammer finished copper. I just wanted to put an earth tone on the back. That's going to be the part that probably hits more than anything else. So it'll probably be a different color the next time you see this thing after I get done, putting it in the dirt, wheeling it. But that's kind of the configuration. It's not super heavy, very easy to bolt on, with the exception you do have to cut the body. Now, to get an idea how much clearance that is, from the bottom of this tube bar here to the ground is just over 34 inches. So that's pretty considerable. Yes, could I have just bobbed the bed and gone that route to actually shorten this thing up? I could have, but the issue and why I don't want to bob the bed is we still use the bed. Having two kids and a wife that go places, you're always running out of room inside of the cab. So I need the bed. It just doesn't make sense to bob it at this point. I think if I was even going to go entertain that, I'd probably go with a moto-built bed versus bobbing this one, because I think the price is going to be about the same once you do it and repaint it and all that stuff. So for right now, I think this makes the most sense. As you can see, I've got my old ARB Simpson Series 3 tent on the back of it. We've already been camping. I've got a crossbar setup from AA Products. I'll put a link here. I cut these bars down years ago to make them work for the Gladiator. I think it was like a $200 bedrock, super inexpensive, all aluminum. The only downside to this setup is it does put depressions in the bed rails. So if you're thinking about doing something like this and going back to like a bed cover, you need to be aware that those depressions don't go away, and it basically makes it really hard for the bed cover to seal out dirt and stuff like that. You can go with a below the rail cover and it'll work a little bit better, but I already had the depressions there. I've had this set up for years. I've had this tent probably for 7 years. This is the same setup that I drove when we did the Rubicon Trail, and it works great. The tent it's pretty worn at this point. It's still fine. The zippers and stuff are good. The outside bag is pretty beat up. I do not want a bag zipper style tent ever again. I'm actually looking at doing a new tent very soon. I want a hard shell that makes it easier to open, and I hate to do it, but I'm probably gonna need to get a bigger tent because my kids really like to sleep in the tent, and even though we're not a big family, as the kids are getting bigger, I need to get something that fits us a little bit bigger. So this thing is still working for now, but that's probably something you're gonna be seeing going away fairly soon. I do wanna give a quick shout out to Low Range 4x4 here in Wilmington, NC for assisting with my bed swap. Also, thank you to U-Joint Off-Road for powder coating the bumper and shipping it down here to me. As I mentioned earlier in the video, one of the reasons why I swapped back to the stock bed was an opportunity to upgrade with something new to the market for the Gladiator. Unfortunately, the company making this product is located in Asheville, North Carolina, where Hurricane Helene absolutely devastated just a few months ago. So for now, that upgrade is on hold. Hopefully, once things start to normalize in the area, we can reevaluate that upgrade. Until then, I'll continue to use the Jeep and modify it to best fit my needs. Thanks for sticking around to the end. Hopefully you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please consider subscribing to the Driving Line channel. Our goal is to excite, entertain, and educate you on all things automotive. So if you want to come be part of our journey, please hit that subscribe button, and we hope to see you on the next video.